Hi friends from around the world. This is an interesting case about reputation. Reputation I do not went over on level 2 because this is more complex. This is more for legal specialists. So I want to reserve myself here. And here we are with a PRADA case. Interesting one with regard to spillover and brand extension, I would say. What is it about? Well, we have the rich PRADA, which is wordmark, which has been applied for at EU IPO as an EU trademark, and for different goods and services, goods in classes 30 and 32, and services in classes 37, 39, 41, 35, 43 and 45. Well, different services and goods, and they were a bit all over the place, so we will come to it in a moment. So they applied for this trademark, the wordmark, the rich PRADA. And guess what? Who opposed to that trademark? Right? The famous Italian retailer PRADA, right? PRADA had some earlier marks. Some international marks, some UK mark. Well, in reality, there are some national marks from UK, Germany, France, and Italy. And they were protected in the classes, 18, 25, and 35, retail service form. So really leather and fashion goods and clothing and retail of clothing. So just all of these, right? So they had these earlier marks. And on the basis of what mark? Well, the PRADA mark. It is a figurative mark here on the screen, but the figurative elements are clearly non-really existent, so it is a kind of a word mark. Okay, so these are the parties and the rights, and the ground invoked was 8.1b, likelihood of confusion, we all know that, and 8.5, reputation. So this went to the opposition division, and the opposition division, they looked at likelihood of confusion and 8.5, namely on 8.5, and they made a mix of some classes are allowed and some classes are not allowed to go through. So it was a mixed decision against and for PRADA, so to say, against and for the rich PRADA. So both went to the boards of appeal. None of them were content with the opposition division decision. And the boards of appeal, they joined both appeals and won proceedings and decided in these decisions on the two appeals. There were two appeals, so here are the decisions on the screen. Now, what happened to the boards of appeal? They looked through the 8.5, so it was on reputation, and they went through the 8.1, 8.5 conditions, requirements, and they thought, well, for some goods and services, it is the opposition is allowed, and for others they are not allowed. The mix was a bit different as to the opposition division, but at the end, well, some goods and services were allowed and others not. What happened is that the trademark, they convey indication of origin, that you know, right? But there is something more. And the court afterwards, they say clearly, well, there is, trademarks convey also a message which maybe have to do with lifestyle, with glamour, with luxury, etc. So a feeling which is transmitted to the consumers when they buy it. And this kind of reputation, this kind of message, which has been built on by advertising, by sponsoring, by whatever action it is, at least it is very expensive to build such a feeling into a trademark. And therefore, that is the reason, so to say, 8.5, that is the reason that we need protection for, greater protection for the reputed marks. And 8.5 is in reality a greater, enlarging the scope of protection for reputed marks, in the sense that you do not need the similarity of the goods and services. As you remember, in 8.1b, likelihood of confusion, what you need is the similarity, at least the similarity of the goods and services. If you don't have similarity of the goods and services, there's no way to go to likelihood of confusion according to 8.1b. For reputed marks, that condition, that requirement is not necessary, but there are still other requirements which, yes, are necessary, and we do not need for a likelihood of confusion. So it is not all win-win for the reputed marks. Now they went over the reputation, and they said, well, there's a high level of reputation for these fashion goods in classes 18, in 25, and in 35. And the early as a registered mark, that is the other condition of 8.5. And the goods and services are not similar, so they don't need to be similar. That is okay. And then the consumers, they must make a link with regard to the goods, to the dissimilar goods and services. So if the goods are similar, that is okay, right? But if they are not similar, there must be a link in the mind of the consumers to be established between one and the other mark. Though there must be a spillover to the traditional reputational goods and services, so the fashion goods, with regard to, in that case, we had babysitting services, among others, or retail, office space management, or some other sporting activities. So there must be a spillover from PRADA into those. Now, if the consumer does not come to that spillover, so to say, then it will not be the case for 8.5 to be rejected, to be applied for. What the boards of appeal, they came to the conclusion that for some of the services that spillover exists. And then they come for the last condition, that may be unfair advantage without due cause, so to take unfair advantage of the reputed mark without cause by, in that case, the Indonesian company, or it must be detrimental for the reputation or for the distinctiveness of the earlier mark, of the reputed mark. And they came to the conclusion for some of the goods and services it was, and for others it was not. Anyway, so the mix was a bit different with regard to the opposition division, mixed in regard to some went in favor of the opposition, some went in against the opposition, and PRADA went to the General Court. And here is the decision of the General Court, right? Now, what was the position of the General Court? Let me make first a small incision here. The heads of claim. So when you go to the boards of appeal, when you go to the General Court, you make heads of claims, what you want, right? And often, more often than not, it is said, well, I want that my mark will be registered, will be a filer, what you say, right? Or I want that the opposition division is being rejected, or I want my mark to be registered, or I want to uphold the contested decision, or I want to register the mark. These are all wrong claims. Why is it so? Well, the power of the General Court, and also from the boards of appeal, which are kind of independent from the EU IPO with regard to its decisions, although for logistics and for payment and for offices, they are all the same in the building of EU IPO, but not with regard to decision. And the General Court, well, something different, right? They have not the right, so to say, to impose something to do for the registry. So you have to register this mark. That is not the case. They annul the decision, or they annul this, or they alter the decision of the opposition division. That's what they do. They do not go further to put injunctions, so to say, into EU IPO. So the heads of claims are very often wrong, and that gives the, well, so to say, the necessity of the General Court to go into it in a judgment on 4 paragraphs to do so. And, well, no harm done. It is interpreted in a way so that it is admissible. So, but why would you expose your weakness in such a way if you can avoid this? So this is here for lawyers, and I want to just to mention it. Now let's go back to the A5. What PRADA mainly said is, or relied on, was first the reputation, and second, the brand extension. So it was, I exposed, so the conditions for the 8.5, it is not on the registered mark, it is not on the similarity of the marks, it is not, well, it is on the reputation. Now, they said, well, the reputation has not been correctly assessed by the boards of appeal because the reputation is the highest possible. We have proved through evidence that is the highest possible reputation. And this must necessarily have as a result that the link between the marks is on all the rejected, or in that case from the opponents, allowed goods and services of the rich PRADA mark. Now, what does the court say? Well, the court says the boards of appeal decision, they stately clear that they took into account the highest level of reputation. So what is your objection, PRADA, with regard to that? And, well, they didn't have. And it was so that the boards of appeal took into account all the evidence, and they recognized that at the highest level of reputation which can be taken into account. Now, what is not possible is that the reputation alone is something which then, well, 8.5 is being granted. That is one of the conditions. But the link, the mental link in the head of the consumers between one company and the other company, one trademark and the other trademark, that is not merely a question of reputation. It is a question of a bit of everything. Everything comes into the mix, such as who are the consumers of the one and who are consumers of the others? Where are the services or the goods marketed? Are they marketed on the same place, on different places? Are the different consumers come to that place or not? What kind of retail channels exist? And you know, everything comes into the mix. And when the goods are as dispar as they can be, which is the case for some goods and services here, babysitting services, I don't know, sporting services more is more education services, PRADA. So with fashion, why would fashion go? What exists and has been recognized by the General Court is that there's a certain spillover. So if there are, so to say, goods and services which are linked to the reputed one, which have the same channel, which then it would be possible. But if they are one dispar with regard to others, babysitting services, well, it is very difficult to come to PRADA, which is we know an Italian company in Germany, in UK. Would they take care of? Is there any economic logic behind that they would go to babysitting services? No, they would not. Naturally, they would not. So the extension of the protection, the spillover into other categories, has its limit, and this is, I think, a good thing for all the consumers. We would not link anything to anything, no, any mark to anything. No, we would certainly have apply a kind of economic logic why this would be a possibility for PRADA to exploit, right? Babysitting services would not be one of them. Now, I do not want to go into each of the services. That is not the necessary here. I want you to grasp what would be the overall architecture and what is the thinking behind in the argumentation when it comes to 8.5. And this linking, that is an important issue. I may go on another, we have not much time here, I wouldn't go in another video if there is some good court rulings which merit it, into what would be the detriment, the taking unfair advantage without due cause, or the detriment to the reputation and distinctive character. That is the last question. I would like to go a bit into that one as well when I can. Thank you for being here with me and having your time.